Hey, Nick, you might want to see if you could hear it on your stream or something. I don't know.
Test, 1, 2.
I don't know how good this is going to work. I don't think this is going to work.
Test.
Hey, you hear that drum?
Test.
So when I was up there,
Test, test.
Okay, we're ready to get started. And this is a public input meeting. And so the rules of the public input meeting are we're gonna take it by category as we talk about the CIP, or PROPEL 2040 is what we've called it. And it's about building the future and about making Lawton better. And so it's important that we get public input. And what we had last time, 5 years ago, when we were doing the same thing, probably about this same time frame, we had 2 or 3 meetings for public input, and out of that came the beautification category. Maybe something else, I don't remember, but I specifically remember Rosemary Bellino coming to one of our meetings and talking about beautification, and that's where that came from. So what's the point? Your input today makes a difference, and certainly can make a difference. Now, the truth is, many times what you're saying is already being considered and all that, but that's great. We appreciate the public input at any rate. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to start with the different categories. Have we got George? Okay, we do have, and I want to give that opportunity to any council members that want to say something, and we want to make sure that we don't have a quorum here. Are you checking?
I see 1, 2, 3. So I see 3. We don't have a quorum.
Okay.
I'm not missing anybody.
All right. The Open Meetings Act keeps us from having a quorum of the council present, so we're just monitoring that to make sure that somebody doesn't walk in, and we've tried to communicate, but sometimes all that communication doesn't get out. We're going to go for an hour and 15 minutes. When 7:15 gets here, we're going to stop wherever we are. I'm going to ask you to come up to the microphone, and you'll have 90 seconds to speak when we're talking about a category. For instance, the first category I'm going to bring up is streets. And so if you want to talk about the streets, you can come up and talk about that. And towards the end, we'll ask what else is it that you would like to see in the CRP or and that kind of thing. And at the very end, if you want to talk about the process, somebody told me they wanted to talk about the process. I didn't think about that. Great. We'll talk about the process. And I've got that on my list, but don't make sure I don't forget you. Okay? All right, so everybody good? Okay, we're going to start with Mayor Pro Tem and see if he wants to make any announcement.
I just look forward to the public's input. The mayor's right. When we did this before, it was kind of fresh ground, and we hadn't thought of everything. And I doubt very seriously that we've thought of everything this time. And there may very well be something out there that we haven't considered. I had somebody call me the other day, and I still haven't figured out if it was in jest or not, but was asking why we did such a poor job of teaching his child government and the way government works. And, you know, the quick answer is that's not our responsibility. That's the responsibility of the school system. But at the same time, for a few years, I've kind of thought that it would be interesting if we could team somehow with Cameron and do teach some kind of civics class, because it's definitely an area that's, you know, we're really heavy into STEM now, and that's good. But it might be nice to be able to fund some kind of program to teach civics, either in this room or at a room in Cameron someday.
I didn't know if we had a bunch of pictures for you or not. Councilwoman Hankins, would you like to say anything?
I'm here, and I'm anxious to hear what people have to say.
Okay.
I can't always answer the questions, but I can get them for you.
Okay, and Ms. Chapman?
So many cities which do not have something like a capital improvements program ends up not progressing forward and this is one way that we can progress in this city, move forward with the different categories that we're interested in that need to be done here in Lawton.
Okay, let's get started. You have 4 1/8 cents sales tax. charged to you every time you go that comes to the city. 2% of that sales tax is for the general fund. The general fund runs the city for operations, generally speaking. Some of that does go into capital items, but not a large percentage of it, though I will give the city manager kudos. He's increased that percentage this year dramatically, which is a good thing for us. The other 2.125 cents is voted on periodically for capital improvement programs, primarily, but not limited to. Sometimes we have items in there like youth programs that don't ever get into the operating budget, and they fall into, we put them in the CIP under a youth program, okay? But primarily, they are capital programs. When we get to talking about streets, we're not talking about maintenance as you think about going out and filling a pothole. The money in the streets portion of the CIP will be for mill and overlay or concrete replacement, okay? Won't be for, in the regular budget, the city manager puts money in for maintenance, okay? Now, we do have a category that we talk about, which is a preventive maintenance catch-up on roads. And that, and the last category was $10 million, and we didn't word it right. So the bond attorney made it, divide it by the number of years and spend it like a maintenance program. So we're going to change that wording, because what it was meant to do was catch up years of not doing preventive maintenance, crack sealing primarily, get Cash Road good and in shape. But the way we worded it, we just messed up, and so we're going to correct that in this one so that we can spend about 3 years getting that caught up, and then preventive maintenance will become a budget item where it belongs. So why put it in the CIP at all? Because when you neglect maintenance, it becomes a capital item. Everybody that owns property understands that. When you neglect maintenance, it becomes a capital item. So instead of letting the parks go, instead of letting the water lines go, we put it, which is what would happen if we had to catch up preventive maintenance. We put it in the CIP and get things caught up so we can move forward. Now, the quarter-cent idea for streets came from Broken Arrow. That's the way they run their streets. Once again, it's capital items. It's for street road improvement and road replacement programs, okay? And Broken Arrow, I just got to looking on their website and noticed they had a quarter-cent dedicated for streets. And so we decided to present that to the council. The council seems to like it. We're going to find out if the citizens like it. And so I'm going to open the floor for anybody that wants to come up and talk about $0.25 for streets and your thoughts on that. And don't everybody rush. That must mean you like it, right? I mean, the number one thing I get calls on is streets. And I get a lot of calls about what is now 40 wins. Started out as 10 wins. Now it's 40 wins in 1 year. That's phenomenal. Never before in the history of our city have we had 40 road projects going on at once. Whether we can maintain that level is going to depend on the cost of mill and overlays. But I would think we could for sure say we're going to do 25 to 30 with this amount of money. So what we're really talking about, in my opinion, is transformation. So I'm going to give just a second. Raise your hand if you want to come out and talk about roads. Okay, let's go to the next category that's just as big, and it's parks. And I've said before that parks investment is not going to go away. And if we don't have a way to continue investing in our parks, and I'm not talking about maintenance, that's in the budget. I'm talking about new equipment. I think you can go look at our parks and see that we're not keeping up. And it bothers me personally that Altus has got a water park built before we do. And so I go on the Norman website. They dedicated 0.5 cent to parks for 15 years. Well, if we do that, we can't do all of the things that we want to do. But if we dedicate 1/4% indefinitely, like the roads, it opens up funding sources and planning. That's a big thing, the ability to plan. You don't get your planning if you don't have a funding source identified of where you're going. And by having a 1/4% dedicated for parks, it changes the whole attitude of all your whole parks department, because they're going to be thinking about what they're going to do next year and the next year and the next year. And it starts changing the whole complexity of everything. Now, I see a bunch of kids back here, and I'm assuming somebody's going to come and talk about parks. So who'd like to come up here and talk about parks? All right, jump right up.
And that wasn't even my family. my family looked at me and said, 90 seconds? There's no way he's going to get that done. Brian Henry, 3703 Northeast Fieldcrest. I also serve as the chairman of the Lawton Youth Sports Authority. And while I won't pretend to be able to speak for all of the youth out here, I am speaking for all the youth out here. Parks is a huge piece of quality of life in any community. We're doing so much work to bring quality jobs and make Lawton a choice, not a requirement, not a I have no other potential, but a choice to live in Lawton. I chose to live in Lawton. My family chooses to live in Lawton. I want my kids to choose to live in Lawton, not have to live in Lawton. And for all of those young folks out there, I want the same thing for them. So whether it's a dotted line or not, the Youth Sports Authority falls under the Parks Department. Not the Parks Department, but the Parks category. We do have a line item in there from the previous CIP. Lots of things have happened that have grown this project, both in cost and scope, but it's all a good piece. 2 years ago, the Sports Authority took over oversight of the sports programming in Lawton. The year before that, there were 1,824 kids in the program, total. This year, we will top over 3,000 kids participating in the program. That's a 59% growth in 2 years. In the facility that we are hoping to build is volleyball, basketball, futsal, which we added. Those components went from 872 in 2022 to over 1,300 kids this past winter. We are playing in LPS facilities, which, God bless them, they have been a tremendous partner. But the growth of the programs have created a strain on getting practice times and playing times in those facilities.
Okay, I'm going to give you more time because you represent a city authority, so go ahead.
And I represent all those kids, right? And I think if we had a signature, raise your hand if you're here because you're interested in the indoor sports facility. Sometimes there's a mic drop moment, but it's not one for me right now, right? As a city, we compare ourselves to peer cities, and I think that's a smart move. The mayor mentioned Broken Arrow and their street program. You mentioned Norman and the dedicated money for parks. Well, what they did with some of that dedicated money is help fund a facility similar to the one we're asking to build here. There was about $27 million that went into that program from the city side. A fella who some people may know, probably the kids in the back, Trey Young, donated $4 million. To date, the Sports Authority has gathered $3.5 million towards this project. We're under contract for land purchase, which is discounted in part of that money. If we're going to compare ourselves to our peer cities, then let's act like our peer cities. Let's get these kids reasons to get in the gyms, to get out of the houses, to get out of whatever they're in, and these coaches leading them and mentoring them. Let's give them a facility that our peer facilities have given their kids. That's what I ask of the community, of the council, and I know the council's behind it. They've been behind this program. Few changes in this. We can break ground this year.
All right, we like it. Very good. Very good. By the way, this is being recorded and broadcast live. It is being broadcast live, right? And obviously recorded. So the other council members will be watching it, but also they will be giving the Cliff Notes version of what is being said so that they can have all that and act on it when we discuss it in the council meeting. Are there others that would like to come up and talk about sports or parks, parks and recreation?
Mayor, could I just want to say one thing, and I don't want to get out in the weeds, but I want to reinforce what the mayor said about planning, because one of the reasons that we need these funds in a manner in which we can plan is that I spend a lot of time at 2 o'clock in the morning searching the internet for grants and things like that, and the city manager can attest to the fact that sometimes I accidentally send him emails at 2 o'clock in the morning saying, hey, we need to apply for this grant, man. This is the greatest thing in the world. And it could be parks, it could be streets, it could be a lot of different things. But one of the things that they require is that you have your match. And if you don't have that match, you can't even apply. I mean, I guess you could, but it's not going to do any good. And so that's one of the really important things about a CIP is it puts, even if the money's not physically there yet because it's going to come someplace down the road, you can say, hey, I've got this money, I can do this, and you can start setting that grant up. And that's just really important because everything that we try to do is so expensive everywhere that we need those grant dollars every time we can possibly get them. I know that Rusty's here someplace probably. There he is. And Rusty is our grant man as far as water and sewer goes. And if we can get the kind of grants that he gets for the parks, we'll be looking pretty.
And by the way, that's the only category that today has been voted on by the citizens to be indefinite. And it is generating a tremendous amount of grants, but it's also generating a tremendous amount of work. And that's the water sewer program. They get a half a cent. There's a few other little things in that, but it's 95%, I'm guessing, water sewer infrastructure. And that, when you drive around and you see 26 miles of water lines being replaced after years and years of neglect, it's because the citizens voted for that indefinite half cent on water sewer. But wait, there's more. There's another 26 miles of water line that are going to be under contract by the end of the year. Did I say that, Rusty? And when those are complete over the next 3 years, I'm going to say, roughly, that we will have 25% of our water infrastructure replaced. 25%. Why is that important? Because last year we had, while this was all still in the planning process, last year we had 850 water line breaks. Did I get it right? 850 water line breaks. So the first phase of that program, I assume by the end of this year, will take care of one half of those water breaks. So we'll go into next year with half the water breaks. And what does that do? That capital investment with a 70-year product that we're using will cut those water breaks, and John's maintenance budget theoretically goes down. And then when his maintenance budget goes down, that gives him the ability to put money in another hot spot where we may be having trouble, such as neighborhood services or the police department or fire department or wherever. So anyone else want to talk about parks? Anybody want to talk about water sewer infrastructure? And if you would, I'm going to ask that you give your name and address. And Brian, I don't think you did, but that's Brian Henry, and he's the, you did? Okay. Yes, ma'am.
Becky Lakey, 7132 Northwest Birch Place. I find it kind of interesting that you talked about Broken Arrow in the beginning. That's where I moved from when I came to Lawton, was Broken Arrow. Their streets, yeah, that's the best streets I've ever been on. I mean, Tulsa streets suck compared to Broken Arrow, but that is what it is. We're off the roads. Now we're on to the water department. You're giving Rusty all these props for all these grants he's received. We have this sales tax coming in for the water department. Y'all are getting loans from the Oklahoma Water Resources Board. You're getting additional loans. And then you're expecting to tax us again? Not in support.
Okay, thank you. There's obvious a lot of misunderstanding. Do we get loans from the Oklahoma Water Resources Board? Absolutely we do. And a lot of those grants, we get $1 million. Rusty, is it $1 million? Typically, $1 million off each one a year is granted back to us. And that's federal funds that's funneled through the Oklahoma Water Resources Board to do things just like this, to help communities with their water and sewer infrastructure. And if you don't borrow the money to fix your water lines, you don't get the grants. So, and it's very low interest. It's always interest that's below the market rates. It's always very, very cheap at that. So, and by the way, it's important to remind everybody that we haven't raised, in the 5.5 years I've been here, we have not raised any taxes. We have extended the amount of time that it's allowed to be assessed, meaning we're taking this out through 2040. If anybody believes that taxes are going to stop, I don't know what to say. We've got to invest in our community. I'm going to throw something else at you. You send your elected officials up here to make a difference. We can't make a difference if we don't have the money. So this PROPEL gives us the funding we need so that you can have the swimming facility that you want, so you can have the sports facility you want. We can't fix the roads without funding. It just can't happen. I know we'd all like to think it would, and I know we'd all like to think we could run the city on that 2 cents that was passed 100 years ago. That's a guess. But that's not reality, and there is no city doing it. There is no city doing it. So what we're talking about here, do you want to progress or do you not? To me, it's that simple. Now, we talked about roads. We've talked about parks. Nobody else on parks? We've talked about water sewer infrastructure and all the great things going on there. Nobody wants to talk about that. Let's talk about some of the buildings that we're talking about working on and see if somebody wants to add a building that we're not thinking about. We've talked about the museum. We had an engineer look at that and say to take care of that museum is $6 million. And I think most people, if you watch TV and read the paper like I hope you do, or look at our website or Facebook page, you know that we have water leaks at the museum, which is a community treasure, putting our accreditation, forgot the word, putting our accreditation at risk. $6 million to fix it. We don't have $6 million free in the budget to do it. The only way we're going to address that is with the CIP. I think we all see the armory sitting out there on Cash Road, and it continues to deteriorate, but we have this goal of putting a community theater in there. And we may not be able to get there under phase 1 of fixing that building, but it just continues to deteriorate, and we have to get it to a place that we can start using it for something. The Carnegie Library, isn't it a shame that that community treasure is deteriorating on it? We walked into it a few years ago, and a part of the wood floor was in trouble because of roof leaks. And so we got the roof fixed, but now there's a plan where potentially we could use that for a youth arts center. And Arts for All has the basement of it now. And that would give that building a purpose, and we could save that community treasure. The library's had a project they've been trying to get funded for years, but it wasn't in the last CIP. And so the library was totally left out of the last CIP. It's my impression that they've been doing some different projects as we have a CIP, but they didn't get in the last one. The McMahon Auditorium, I still haven't gotten it, but I'm expecting them to make a request for new seating. The animal shelter, I think if once again, if you watch TV and read the newspaper, you know the animal shelter's got to be addressed. We have storm siren issues, cemetery, central fire station, and then a presentation was made Tuesday night on a station alert system. And then a discovery zone, which normally would cost, easy $25 or $30 million. But because we have the mall already purchased and have a focus on STEM, we could do a discovery zone much easier. And when we were talking to congressional aid, he felt sure that we could get a large, somewhere between 10 and 20 million in HUD grant for STEM. Well, there are other grants. The Army has a lot of STEM grants too. So there's no telling what door that will open up. Those are grants you don't get if you're not making an investment as a community. The key to all the grants we're getting is that we have the money available because of PROPEL to do projects, and that opens up the doors to grants. One of those case in point is the $5 million we got on Goodyear Boulevard from the state, and the 75% grant we got on what I think is a $25 million project on the Goodyear bypass or extension, whatever we want to call it, where it goes up to the interstate. So there's the buildings. Oh, we also have a victim resource center that would be a building, but that money would be designated for 15 years of operations. And the reason for that is there are foundations. I don't want to say any of them because I don't want them to feel like I'm obligating them, but you can just imagine. There are foundations that will help pay for bricks and mortar if you can prove your operations funds. So if we can fund a victim resource center for 15 years, it will open up the door to grants that will pay for the building, for the facility. And that's very important because we, frankly, up until about 2 years ago, weren't doing a very good job in our sexual assault response. But we formed a task force, got all of the groups involved, including the Attorney General's office even comes down for it monthly, and as well as OSBI, plus other local groups. And there must be 15 different partners that are involved in a sexual assault or domestic violence. And what we've learned is, we don't like it, that there are 4 times as many domestic violence. And if you don't have a way to take care of the victims, they just don't call in. They're scared. And then it just keeps happening. So this has become a very important thing. The council's aware of it. I think we have a few council members on there. The city manager has a team that's there regularly, and we're constantly working to improve our response. This is fashioned after a model in Oklahoma City called Palomar, if you want to look that up. So anybody want to come up and talk about buildings? Yes, ma'am. Come on up.
I'd like to talk about the library.
I will say, if you want to talk, feel free to just get up and head this way. Yes, ma'am. Name and address,
Yes,
please.
my name is Sue, and I'm on the library board. And I'm here this evening to talk about the ceiling that is needed by the Lawton Public Library. Currently, there is no fire protection system in the building. Let me say that again. Currently, there is no fire protection system in the Lawton Public Library. We need a new ceiling for the building, which serves both the city of Lawton as well as the county. And we serve both adults and children. I know Randy's been a part of us not too long ago. You yourself have been through the library. The building is 50 years old, and the ceiling is deteriorating. Currently, there are 1,000 light fixtures, 1,000. They all use fluorescent bulbs. We're grossly out of date with the way we consume energy in the Lawton Public Library. Our director, in her wisdom, has had studies done. We know approximately how much money is needed to rectify the situation, and that would be roughly $2.3 million. And we do have pages and pages of reports as to what we need to do to address the problem of the ceiling in the Lawton Public Library. I can't stress enough the importance of the safety issues that I'm bringing before you, and the number of people who process through the library, children, adolescents, and adults.
Question, please. Does the 2.3 include fire protection? And are you telling me there's no sprinkler system in the library?
That's what I'm telling you.
There's no sprinkler system in the public library?
That's correct.
And so the 2.3 includes the ceiling issues and lighting you talked about, plus fire protection?
That would be correct.
Is that right, Kristen? City Manager, I'd like that verified as soon as possible. Thank you so much for coming.
Okay.
Is there anybody else that would like to come up and talk about buildings? Carnegie Library? Am I the only one that likes Carnegie Library?
I'm coming to speak for somebody that's not here that asked me to say for her. Marcia Cronk says, please support a new animal intake, isolation, quarantine, and adoption center. Also support for programs to manage strays, backyard breeders, and abandonment.
Okay, thank you for coming. And we do have new animal shelter. Some of those things mentioned are operations, but the building itself is in the CIP currently as it stands. Anyone else want to talk about buildings besides the sports building? That's under sports. Okay, let's move on to crime fighting. We've got $10 million in it for crime fighting. Now, I know everybody wants us to hire more police, and we want to hire more police. And we're hiring every person that qualifies and passes the academy. But we can't lower our standards, and we haven't lowered our standards, and we still don't have every slot filled. And the truth is we don't expect to get them filled. So the way I see it, and I believe the council agrees, we have to do everything we can technology-wise to help them. And what does that mean? Well, that might mean license plate readers that help them spot people. You know, those license plate readers can work a lot faster than people. In the last CIP, we bought something that you could get a ticket in 3 minutes. That was kind of neat, wasn't it? And then, but what about cameras? You know, we could watch every park or certain places with one person, and they could dispatch the police all over town. So there's different things that can be done, but every bit of it costs money, and it's a capital investment. Would anybody like to come up and speak about that? Okay, what about the airport? Oh, go ahead, yeah.
So Summer Hurley Jacks, 7954 Northwest Crossland Circle. My question would be, I know you've spoken before about all the prevention models. Would any of this money go towards crime prevention, or is it just enforcement?
You know what, that's a great question. I view it as both. I view it that in this instance, this is more enforcement, but it is also prevention, knowing that there are cameras in every park. But we do have some other things in youth programs, which is where we usually focus on prevention. We have a lot in that category, and I'll bring that up next, okay? Anybody else on police technology? Crime fighting technology? Okay, let's talk about the youth programs. So the last PROPEL had $6 million of youth programs in it, and that program is continuing, but we're not proposing that we add to that category. But what we did last year was take $35,000 from a category that wasn't being used for youth from an old CIP that had some money, and we got with Arts for All. And Arts for All did a summer camp, and they, to date, have been the most cost-effective youth program we've ever had. It cost 60 cents an hour per child for that arts program, and it was amazing. I've talked to them about expanding that to a July program. That was a June. We need some things going on in July. Currently, most of our programs are in June, and we leave July empty. Now, not only are we giving kids things that keep them busy, that's important. It's important to keep them out of trouble, because once they're in the juvenile system, they have a lower percentage of high school graduation. But if they're in arts for 4 years, they will have a 34% higher graduation rate than somebody who's not in arts for 4 years. Same thing with sports. If we can keep them busy and keep them engaged in something, we raise their graduation rate. But we're not the school, so why is that important to us? I'll tell you why it's important. 80% of everybody over here in the county jail does not have a high school diploma. And if you don't get your kids a high school diploma, you catapult the idea that they're going to be spending time in jail. And anybody without a high school diploma is unemployed 25% of their adult life. And when they do have a job, it typically, I know there are exceptions, typically is not enough to support a family. So you and I can change the trajectory of our city and the image of our city by investing in children and doing the things that help raise graduation rates. No, we're not the schools, but we are a city, and the kids are ours, and they're going to be adults, and we need to be investing in them to be productive young adults. Plus, I think that it's another important thing to always be investing in the arts and humanities, and so we put some money in here for the Arts and Humanities Department to be doing the same things, because they also have some great programs, and we've got to work on communicating them better, and I've suggested that we start using kids to use them, use LPS kids to communicate all the things that we have going on for kids, because our Arts and Humanities program has so many, well, year-round activities, but I'm just going to talk about summer activities. And I go out to MacArthur Middle School to talk to a class, and they say there's nothing to do, so I knew they were going to say that, so I brought them a list. And it was like, that list is like, you know, taking a roll of toilet paper and letting it roll. I mean, it's long. There is so much going on and so much for people to be involved in, for kids to be involved in, and we've got to find a way to communicate it better, but we also have to increase it. And that's one reason the Arts and Humanities started more low-cost, no-cost family activities, giving people things to do that don't cost much or don't cost anything will help us to continue transforming our community. And then we've got some money in here that really refunds an old program started by Stanley Haywood. And that was a program where kids could work and be paid for it in the summer. And they would work for the city, you know, cleaning up parks and doing different things, working for the Arts and Humanities, working at the auditorium, working at the museum, working at city assets, the library. And this summer program would help give them a little jingle in their pocket and help them understand the joy of work and reward. And so that's our youth programs. Anyone want to comment on any of that? We do add a little bit of money to sidewalks. Now, it's not as much as in the last one, and the reason is we haven't spent much of the last one. And the reason we haven't spent much of the last one is after the citizens passed it, the council decided to put all the marijuana tax money into sidewalks. So we access that before we access the CIP. But we are adding some to this category, and especially the ADA component of that category. In the 2015, there was $1 million added for ADA to bring ADA up. That's ramps in places, especially the older parts of town. Before we did ADAs, you've got a lot of curbs and broken ramps and things, and that's what that's for. Anybody want to talk about that? I think everybody sees we're investing heavily in sidewalks. Yeah, come on down, please.
Hi, Deborah Jones, 2920 Northwest Templeton Terrace. Mayor, I hate to disagree with you, but we need more money for sidewalks.
I'm used to being disagreed with. So
you can't touch me on that. We need more money for sidewalks. It is the most popular program this city has adopted in years. The compliments that I hear on City Hall are about your sidewalks and about the fact that people no longer are using their wheelchairs in the traffic lanes of Cash Road. Think about that. So I would recommend you put as much as you can or more than the last program. It's certainly fine to use the marijuana money, but we can't really have mobility with just the ramp. Yeah.
The ADA money is for, as a matter of fact, I brought this up at the last council meeting, and it's going to come back to us. For instance, we can fix from Lori Tatum all the way to 11th Street. There's a lot of fixing that can be done with that money where there's no ramps in many cases, so I get that. Now, John, how much, what's our current projected marijuana income? Marijuana tax income.
Mayor, I don't know off the top of my head.
Okay.
Well, I understand. I'm just recommending that you put more money in sidewalks, because when we talk about quality of life, it's not just beautification, and I love beautification. I worked with Rosemary.
All right.
And so, but it's has to do with sidewalks and public safety and a lot of things.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else want to talk on sidewalks or ADA? Okay, thank you, Deborah. Okay, now here's one. And this was actually a category that was put in because of a public meeting 5 years ago, and that's beautification. And we made a little wording problem in it. And so, you know, the bond attorney tells you what you have to do, because they sell tax-free bonds. You have to toe the line. And as much as we get accused of not spending the money the way we said, we would be in big trouble by the SEC if we did that. So we are controlled, and we could not spend that beautification money on beautification items because of some wording problems that we put in there. So we clear that up so that we can do some beautification problems. It did help us get started with the bulk waste program, and I think that was pretty much, there's one other thing, some mowing problems that we were having, and other than that, we couldn't use it to beautify the entrances to the city or whatever. And so we're going to correct that in the wording. I also told you about changing the preventive road catch-up. Here's a new category. Of course, you know about our D&D program, where we are putting more and more houses on the dangerous and dilapidated list and tearing them down if the owner doesn't get them in livable condition. And this is an area that was not addressed for years and years in an aggressive enough fashion. And I can promise you, we are the most aggressive city in the state of doing this. And so we add money to that category. Does anybody want to come and talk about that? Deborah, you might as well just sit down on the front row.
No, this is the first time I've been down here in 4 years. So I don't want to get too comfortable. Thank you, Mayor. Mayor, I'd like to recommend to the council to approach this problem a little differently. Years ago, we had a drainage maintenance problem, and so we created a specific activity division called drainage maintenance, and it had a funding source, and it worked out really well because that's all they did. And when you see what's going on in our drainage districts right now, you really see how well they're maintained and during the growing season, and herbicide, and that's proper and all of that. I want to recommend, though, that you consider using your CIP funds to create a division called Elimination of Slums and Blight. This division would have, obviously, personnel, equipment cost, an operating cost from the beginning, from inspection all the way through condemnation and demolition. You would do your demolitions in-house. You would buy front-end loaders. You'd have personnel that could demo these houses. The infill areas, the core areas of our city, the city that I grew up in, they're deteriorating faster than my body. And we've got to take them down. And we've got to offer them in a land bank to developers to do something new in housing that addresses some economies. But I think you'll find if you look at this and to do it, you're going to be able to efficiently do this. Your problem is contractors and a number of things, sharing some inspection duties.
Unfortunately, we're at our time limit, but I really like this idea. And maybe you could get with the city manager on maybe an outline or something, because the next category, you might sit down and get 90 more seconds, is $25 million for a redevelopment fund. And the idea is to go into one neighborhood and buy it up under the rules of urban renewal, or a portion of it up. Rarely is there a neighborhood that we want to completely wipe out. And that money, then you would put a TIF over it, is the idea, and the increase in taxes from that fund would go to pay that back. So it would be a revolving fund that could then theoretically be used to go to a new neighborhood. Now, does anybody want to speak on that? Deborah?
Yes, thank you. 90 seconds, I couldn't get my land bank in. I think, though, if you use condemnation of dilapidated structures, these are owners who, they can't pay the lien, or there's no point in putting a lien on them. You just condemn them. Put them in a land bank. We need to mow them and keep them up. Now we have an incentive without using urban renewal to pay landowners unless we need to, based upon a small strategic area. And that's how you do slum and blight. You don't shotgun it out in every ward. You come in, it's a target area. You have to have some infrastructure to support it. If you got money to help it, it's wonderful. But we can give away land to developers who want to build new kinds of housing on the, lower end of the economy for working people. So I think that's a great idea. I commend it. But you're right. You start at the first and you knock it down. You find it, knock it down, clear it, hold it, and you get input from developers and builders on what kind of project do they want. Do they want to do duplexes, quads? Do they want to do small houses, which are being done, cottage houses in Oklahoma City? All of that's available to you if we just attack the core. And you guys get the money. You get the taxes for it.
Thank you, Deborah. I really seriously would like an outline of what you're talking about. Please just do that in your spare time. Is there anybody else that has any comments on the idea of a redevelopment fund to start?
Mayor, the answer to your question on the marijuana sales tax money is the projections around $400,000 for next year.
All right. How much should we spend on sidewalks? Do you remember? I should ask that at the same time. Shouldn't I? It seems like it was a little over $1 million.
Yeah, it was.
And we got a lot done.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. All right, let's move on. I was expecting a more talkative group. 2 things left, unless I've forgotten some, Randy. Oh, the golf course. Now, I'm only 67. but I'm pretty sure in my lifetime, we've never put any money in that golf course. And when I go to the mayor's conferences, everybody puts money into their municipal golf course. So we've got some money in there for the municipal golf course, and we don't really know what they're going to want to do, but it doesn't even have a sprinkler system on the fairway, so that's pretty light. I wouldn't want to have to run that thing. So anyway, anybody want to comment on that? Okay, industrial development. Anybody want to comment on that? I see a little movement. Come on up.
Good afternoon, or evening. Mark Gibson, 29 Northwest Havonshire Court. I'll take the opportunity to talk about the industrial development. You know, I agree with you and the City Council on the need for the CDP, the betterment of the city. But, you know, you got to keep in mind that the Lawton personnel, or the people in Lawton now, have a stake in this as well. So, along with talking about the fundings, you know, and how you're upheld to spend it on certain amount or certain things, there's a lot of misconceptions out there. You know, there's misconceptions that CIP money has gone to West End development and things like that. So I think we've got to find ways to be more open and honest with this. You know, as far as the industrial areas, you know, I think the city needs to start looking at things that, you know, focusing on bringing in industry that isn't controversial, heavy industry, you know, that could be hazardous to people's health, that everybody's saying. There's a lot of, you know, criticism about that. You know, we can start focusing on STEM, as you said. You know, we've got the Army here. We can start looking at bringing in industry into a business park to build drones or things like that type of things instead of big, heavy industry. You know, we need to find ways to try to get the people back to work that are here now. One of the big, I'm new to Lawton, I've been here a little over a year now. One of the biggest issues I saw, besides the infrastructure, and I appreciate all the work being done on the streets, is, you know, the poverty here. And I think you guys have inherited, you know, the lack of insight or action from your predecessors when things changed in the city from, you know, the stories I'm hearing from before I got here in the 80s where, you know, it was the bad city, you know, sin city.
Unfortunately, you're out of time.
I'm out of time, yeah.
But
okay.
I'm going to bring up process in a minute.
Okay.
So you can just sit there and you can talk 90 more seconds on the process. I think that's really where you're going anyway, but anybody else that would like to talk about industrial development? I think it's been very important to moving our city forward.
Mayor?
Yes, sir.
I would just want to say that in the long run, in the way future of the city, that's where the future really is in industrial development, because that's where you get multiple jobs. You know, do we need another good year? We sure do. And that is where you build the future, is through industrial development. We can do all kinds of little things to help, but if we don't put people to work, it's all just going to circle back around and need to be done again. So we kind of have to work both sides, but in the long run, I think industrial development is where our solution is.
Okay, now I'm going to put our longest serving council member on the spot. Randy Warren, 20 years roughly, right? Okay. You had hair when you got here, right? Okay. I mean on top. Yeah. So, in your 20 years, the last 5 years has been under PROPEL. Can you talk a little bit about how PROPEL has changed things and the ability to accomplish? Go ahead.
Well, in the first 15, we all wanted to do things. You know, it's like we all had these really great ideas, but if you don't have the money, you really can't accomplish a whole lot. You do a little bit, you do a little bit, you do a little bit, and sadly, when you're just doing a little bit, sometimes that rolls back around, and pretty soon it was almost like you didn't do it. So it's almost like it's wasted money. And this is the first time in the 20 years that I've been up here that I really feel like the staff, the council, the management, and the citizens are all on the same page. I think we all want Lawton to be a place where young families will want to locate and want to stay. The ones that are already here, we want them to stay, and we want to bring new ones in. And I think this is the first time that everybody has worked together. In the past, everybody wanted that, but they all wanted their own little piece and try to make it happen just the way they want it. And this is really the first time that we've all been able to sit down and compromise and really look at some of the things that we need to do, some of the things we have to do, and keep all those things in mind when we're making plans. And that's the optimum word, is plan. Because if you don't have the money to plan it, it's never going to happen. And like I said earlier, if you don't have the money to plan that so that when that grant comes along, that grant, I promise you, there's been times that I've got emails that I could show you where I send an idea to John, John sends it to Rusty, and Rusty says, yeah, that project would be great, but we don't have the money to put with it. And so you need to have that money ready. And this is the first time, this 5 years has been the first time that we've had that money where we could use it to get grants. We could use it to actually do the things that the citizens want done, and have been able to accomplish a lot.
What about the idea of renewing it after 5 years? Because it's my opinion that every 5 years we're adding 5 years to the CIP and we start planning, because so many projects take so long. We're basically 5 years ago we're planning the first PROPEL. I think it's fair to say that 70% of the projects are not started; they're still being planned. So what's your thoughts about jumping in here 5 years later, picking this stuff up and extending it?
And that's exactly what it does, is it gives you the ability to move forward. And that's been, in the past, that's been part of the problem. Even when we did accomplish stuff, by the time we got it done, people forgot that they asked for it because it took so long to get it done. Those people, a lot of them weren't even here still. And, you know, it would be a completely different council. But when we've got the 5 years under our belt right now, we've got funds started, we've got planning started, we can take a lot of those funds and begin projects, but we'll be able to also plan for the next 5 years and on, and hopefully that it just continues on, because we're not Oklahoma City, we're not Tulsa, we're not ever going to be able to just start, you know, whipping out $200 or $300 million to do things. We have to plan, we have to make it all fit into that puzzle. We have to have the grants, we have to have the planning, we have to have the funding from the citizens, because, and that's another thing. I truly believe that this is the first council that I can remember where every single member believes that that money belongs to the citizens, and that's where that money came from. A lot of times councils end up with the opposite thought that citizens do. That the one thing that citizens have spoken to me about over 20 years is, well, why can't we just do this? And why can't, because they think we're the federal government, and they think we've got a basement where we print money, and we don't. You know, that's the federal government. That's not the local government. But the council that sits here now, and hopefully the councils that will sit here in the future, will look at the last 5 years and be able to use that as a template to start accomplishing things. If the mill and overlay and the water lines and stuff that are happening right now, that's 20 years, that's never happened, ever. Not one single time have we had projects like that, much less multiple projects like that going on all at one time. I really looked forward to it, and I knew it was going to happen, to go from why can't we have to how come I can't get across town because of all the work that's being done on the roads. You know, and that's a really great problem to have, and I'm looking forward to it. I just had a phone call the other day about Gore Boulevard on the west side where they started it, and we've got problems with traffic going through the neighborhoods now. And I hate that problem, but it's a good problem to have because we've waited for, I can't even tell you how many years for Gore to be done. But I feel positive about, and I'm not going to be here much longer. So I really feel positive about where we're headed. There were times in the past where I thought, you know, if I didn't have a job here, I'd probably be gone. But I don't feel that way now. I feel like that the citizens want to move forward. I feel like the council wants to go forward. I think the mayor wants to go forward. Staff for sure. The staff is happy to have money. I know that they've had really hardship in the past because we ask them for this and ask them for this and ask them for this, and they're in their office going, yeah, that'd be great. I've been wanting to do that for a long time, but I don't have any money. And so now we've got some money for them, and they're working. They're making this stuff happen, and I appreciate their hard work. I know the rest of the council and the mayor does too. But it really is, it feels like a community that wants to move forward.
All right. I saw somebody was going to say something about industrial development. Did you want to come and say something? Okay, and the last thing, the process of the CIP, if you want to talk about that. So now there's your cue.
All right, thank you. Just to finish up on the last thing, I'll take a few seconds here. You know, with the industry, one of the things that we look at is, you know, there's a lot of job openings right now. 70% of the positions or companies out there have job postings. So maybe we can find a way to get the employer and the employees together, you know, whether it's, you know, job fairs, whether it's online job posting board to try to get people here to work, whether it's increasing transportation around town to get people to some of these jobs where they're needed. As far as the process, you know, one of the things that I was talking about is being new here, there was a lot of speculation on how the funding was being spent. So, you know, I think the city has to be, or the city council has to be, you know, open, and I don't know if it's already there and I'm just not aware of it, but how do people know what is being funded, what projects are being, you know, worked on, what dollar amount there is, you know, the funding is coming in and how it's being expended, because there's a lot of misinformation out there on the internet, and being new, I've tried to look for some of those things. Yeah. I think that's, and talking about industry again, you know, you're talking about extending Goodyear Boulevard up to Rogers Lane. You know, one of the options when I looked at, because live out in that area, is what if you extend it farther south down to, you know, Highway 36, I believe it is, you know, to go in by Geronimo to the interstate. Because, you know, Rogers Lane is already pretty packed with semi-trucks as it is now, and that'll be the goal once you start to build up that industrial area out there. So maybe take a look at, maybe if you can send it south too, provides another avenue to the interstate.
Okay, very good. Thank you. Yes, come on up.
My name's Leanne Enderly, 316 Northwest 32nd Street. My husband was military, and we have lived all over the United States. And this is the only town that when we moved here had no sidewalks and had crappy roads, and we paid the highest amount of sales tax. And so I'm happy to see that you're finally starting to put sidewalks in, you're finally starting to fix some of your roads. We've been here almost 20 years now. But I'm still wondering why you have such a high tax. The town I grew up in Utah, the whole state of Utah, their tax is only 5%. They have sidewalks on every street on both sides, not just one. They have beautiful parks, because I go back there every year and we have a family reunion, and it's always a fight. The 1st of January, as soon as those open up, we have some people that go and try to get one of the parks and get our name in it, and we have to pay like $30 to reserve it, even though we're not going to be using it for until the end of June. But what I'm wondering is, can we as a council or as a city tighten our belt and see if we can't knock it down even 1 cent? I know you're talking about all these things about where you want to spend the money. It's like, well, can we live within our means and kind of tighten up our belts? So that's where I'd like to leave.
Thank you, and I'll address that. And it's a good question. Every state has a different way of funding their municipalities. For instance, in Texas, they're funded largely through ad valorem tax. Consequently, the ad valorem tax is 3.3 times what ours is. So whatever you're paying on your house would be 3 times as high, but the sales tax rate's lower. But in Oklahoma, whenever it was set up, we don't control that. Whenever it was set up, municipalities only got sales tax. Now, at the time, that might have been the best decision. A lot of people question it now. We do get some ad valorem, but only on capital projects. I guess we also get it on lawsuits, right? So, right now, citizens have voted for, I think it's roughly 11 mills in order for us to be able to do particular street projects. And so the way the state of Oklahoma is set up, it requires us to have sales tax. Now, the state of Oklahoma also gets sales tax. So their part is 5%, isn't it? Or is it 4?
I think it was 4 1/8.
4 1/8, and then we're a 4 1/8, and then the county gets some. Okay, so 5% in Utah doesn't tell the whole story, because somehow that city is getting the money, and it's probably through ad valorem, higher property tax. I don't know anything about Utah, and I don't want to get into a debate because I don't know. I'm just telling you, generally speaking, that's the way it is. I'm going to give you, for instance, the Walmart, as you're going into, I looked at this a few years ago when we were studying it. The Walmart, as you're going into Wichita Falls, pays the city of Wichita Falls about $66,000 a year in property tax, just to the city. That doesn't include the school districts and the state and whoever else gets property tax there. Here, that number would be about $6,000. Okay, so you can see the difference that we have. But they have cheaper sales tax, so you feel better, except when you pay that property tax that's 3 times as high. But I appreciate you bringing that up. Now let's talk about how sidewalks are typically built, because sidewalks are paid for by the first person that buys the house. And when a house is built, the sidewalk's included in the price of the house, okay? Now, it's actually paid by the developer, that's passed on to the builder, that's passed on to the first person that buys their house. And so why do we not have sidewalks? Because somebody in the 1950s, I guess, talked the city council into not requiring sidewalks. And they probably used some reasoning that we're becoming more mobile and nobody's walking anymore. And certainly we have more cars per household than we did when I was growing up. But what happens? Well, then you become a society that doesn't walk, and then the cycle starts. You start realizing how important it is to be out walking. And you want to become a society that walks, but a decision was made 50, 60, 70 years ago that impacts you today. And it's just something we have to deal with, okay? And so we can start addressing these problems, but they're going to take years to work out. And I think we have to understand that. And I think most do. Any other comments on the process? Okay, I'm going to open the mic, and you guys want to come down and talk for just a minute, we'll give you 90 seconds. All right, then I'm going to, any elected officials want to say anything? City manager, you want to say anything? Okay, Randy, go for it.
I would just encourage everybody here and at home to, I'm not going to tell you to go out and vote yes. I think you need to go out and vote your conscience. But I think if you look at the programs, your conscience is going to tell you that we need this. The city of Lawton needs this. We need to continue forward. We've got momentum. We've been propelled to the place that we're at right now, and we need to continue propelling ourselves forward. Everybody has to vote the way that they feel right, but if you want Lawton to expand, if you want Lawton to have better things, I hear people all the time, why doesn't Lawton have this, and why doesn't Lawton have that, and why doesn't Lawton build a Dave & Buster's, for example? Well, the reason for that is because the guys that own Dave & Buster's say that you have to have X amount of households that make X amount of money. Well, the only way that's going to happen is if we continue making Lawton a place where people want to come to, and we expand the number of people that are here and the number of rooftops that those companies can count, and then suddenly they show up. I just would encourage everybody to look at the things that are happening right now and look at the need that we have to continue them on. And I lied. I'm gonna ask you to vote yes.
I'm going to ask you to vote yes, too. I'm going to tell you PROPEL is changing the city, and we're addressing long existing problems like we've never addressed them before. I think people are beginning to see, and it's unfortunate that it's taken so long, but let me tell you, it just takes a long time to plan. And municipal government moves kind of slow, and some of that's for a reason, to make sure that we get it all right. So I apologize for having a cold, but I wanted to be here tonight, and I'm sorry my voice is giving out. Thank you all for coming and be a part of the problem. Come on down, sir. We got one more.
Craig Foster, 2413 Northwest 30th Street. Born and, not say born, but really much raised here. Graduated from Lawton High, graduated from Cameron, played ball here. I represent the youth back there, and then thank Mr. Ryan Henry for inviting me up here today to speak about our youth program. But to see the city grow, and just growing up here without a facility to play basketball in, and traveling to Oklahoma City, Norman, Dallas, Houston, etc., just seeing the facility that those towns have and those cities have, for the kids, I think it's a great opportunity for us to grow as a city, as a youth, because the youth is our future, and without them, the city doesn't grow. So if I have any say so, I would definitely would vote yes for that indoor sports complex.
All right, thank you so
Yes,
much
sir.
for coming. We actually have 2 more minutes. Anybody want to talk? All right, thank you guys for coming. God bless you.